There's an unwritten rule in Las Vegas. No one looks the waitress in the eye. They look at the cleavage, they look at the short skirt, they look at the tray with the free drinks, but no one, absolutely no one, looks into the eyes of the woman serving them the gin tonic. For the players, the waitress is an NPC, a non-playable character, a robot distributing alcohol. And that is the most expensive mistake the three biggest casinos in the world ever made. Because Sarah Jenkins was not a robot. Sarah Jenkins was a human tape recorder. Sarah was 44 years old. She had been serving drinks on the Strip for 22 years. She started at Circus Circus when she was young and pretty and worked her way up to the high-limit lounge at the Bellagio. 22 years of being invisible. 22 years of listening. People assume poker players are the best at reading people. False. A Las Vegas waitress knows if you're going to file for divorce before your wife does. She knows if you're broke by how you hold your glass. And most importantly, she knows when the casino bosses are desperate. This story begins on a Tuesday night in 2011. The Bellagio was quiet. Sarah was cleaning a table in the VIP area. At the next table, two men in expensive suits were arguing in hushed tones. They were the casino's vice president of marketing and a risk analyst. They were drunk. "We need whales, Mike," said the VP, his tie undone. "The quarter is a disaster. If we don't get someone to bet $10 million before Friday, Wall Street is going to eat us alive." "We can't offer more incentives," replied the analyst. "We're already giving a 15% discount on losses. If we go up to 20%, the mathematical edge flips." "To hell with the mathematical edge," the VP slammed the table. "Give me a name. If someone brings $5 million in cash, I'll sign a 20% rebate and let them change the blackjack rules. I need volume. I need action." Sarah kept cleaning. Her face showed nothing, but her brain, sharpened by 2 decades of survival, clicked. For those of you who don't know, this is what Sarah had just heard. Casinos, to attract multimillionaires, whales, offer loss rebates. If you lose $1 million, they give you back $100,000. But the VP, in his desperation to meet quarterly targets, had just said he would authorize a 20% refund. Sarah wasn't a mathematician, but she had watched thousands of pros play. She knew that if you play perfect blackjack, the house edge is only 0.5%. If the casino refunds 20% of your losses, the mathematical advantage flips. The player has the edge. It's a money printing machine, as long as you have the starting capital and the nerves of steel to withstand the variance. Sarah had the intel, but she had 2 problems. 1, she didn't have $5 million. 2, if she, a waitress, tried to sit at a high-limit table, they would laugh at her. She needed an actor, a Trojan horse. Sarah finished her shift, changed clothes in the locker room, went out into the Vegas night. She didn't go home. She went to a dive bar downtown, far from the lights. There, sitting at the bar, was Arthur. Arthur was a former stockbroker from New York. He had lost his license and his fortune in the 2008 crisis. Now he was a functional alcoholic living off scraps in Las Vegas. But Arthur had something Sarah needed. He could act. He had the bearing, the vocabulary, and the arrogance of a millionaire, even if his shoes were broken. Sarah sat next to him. "Arthur," said Sarah, "stop drinking. We have work." "Arthur, I don't even have enough for a tip," he mumbled. "You don't need money, you need a suit, and you need to do exactly what I tell you." Sarah pulled a notebook from her purse. In it, she had names, dates, and numbers written down. It was her life savings, plus a loan she had taken from a shady lender, putting her house up as collateral. In total, Sarah had scraped together $200,000. It wasn't $5 million, but it was enough for the show. The plan, the Bellagio. Phase 1, the bait. The next night, Arthur walked into the Bellagio. He was wearing a rented tuxedo that fit him like a glove. He walked as if he owned the building. Sarah was on shift, carrying trays. Arthur sat in the VIP area. He ordered the most expensive whiskey. Sarah approached. "Good evening, sir," she said, pretending not to know him. Arthur caused a scene. He started talking loudly on the phone, a prepaid mobile with no credit. "Don't give me that crap, Jerry. I have 10 million liquid and the MGM is offering me a 15% discount. If the Bellagio doesn't give me 20%, I'm taking my money to Macau." He hung up the phone in a fury. The VP of marketing, the same one Sarah had heard the night before, was nearby. He heard it. The words 10 million are like blood to a shark. The VP approached Arthur. "Excuse me, sir. Did I hear you're looking for action?" Arthur looked at him with disdain. "I'm looking for respect and a 20% discount on losses, and I want to negotiate the table rules. If not, don't waste my time." The VP was sweating. It was Thursday. He needed those numbers. "If you bring the money, we can talk." Arthur smiled. The money is on the way. Phase 2. The Lie. Arthur didn't have 10 million. He had Sarah's 200,000 in a suitcase. But in the world of high rollers, credit is king. Arthur signed a marker, a line of credit, for $5 million using forged documents Sarah had gotten from a contact in the underworld. The casino, in its desperation, barely checked his solvency. They wanted him to play now. Arthur sat at the table. Sarah served the drinks. She couldn't talk to him, but they had established a code. If Sarah placed the napkin with the logo facing Arthur, minimum bet. If she placed it facing the dealer, maximum bet. If she brought water, stand. If she brought alcohol, hit. Sarah controlled the game from the tray. They started playing. The rules Arthur had negotiated were brutal for the casino. Blackjack pays 3-2. Dealer stands on soft 17, can split any pair up to 4 times, and most importantly, 20% rebate if he loses more than $500,000. Arthur started playing. The first few hands were tense. Arthur had to lose. He had to look like a bad player so the casino would get confident. He lost 100,000. He lost 200,000. The VP watched from afar, smiling. We got the whale. But then Sarah brought a gin and tonic, the signal, now. Arthur raised the bet to the allowed maximum, $50,000 per hand, playing 2 hands at once, $100,000 at risk every 30 seconds. The atmosphere changed. Arthur started winning. Sarah from a distance was reading the deck. She wasn't counting cards the traditional way. She knew the dealer. His name was Ben. Sarah knew that Ben, when he was tired, and it was 2 a.m., lifted the card a millimeter too high when checking for blackjack. Sarah, serving drinks to the players behind, could see the reflection of the card on the metallic surface of the chip dispenser. It was a tiny detail, invisible, but Sarah saw it. Napkin to the left, Ben has a 10. Napkin to the right, Ben has a low number. Arthur played with supernatural precision. He split 10s against the dealer's 6, something a normal player would never do, but is correct if you know the dealer is going to bust. He doubled on 12. Arthur's mountain of chips grew. He recovered his losses. He went up $1 million, $2 million. The VP stopped smiling. "Who is this guy?" he whispered to security. "He's playing like a computer." But they couldn't kick him out. They had signed a contract for 48 hours of play. At 5 a.m., Arthur stood up. "I'm tired," he said, yawning. "Sir, you must play at least 4 more hours to validate the discount," said the pit boss, trying to keep him. "I don't need the discount," Arthur said, pointing to his chips, "because I won." Arthur cashed out $4.2 million. The casino had to pay. The VP almost vomited. Arthur walked out of the casino, got into a limo. 2 blocks later, the limo stopped. Arthur got out. He got into Sarah's car, an old Toyota Corolla parked in an alley. They opened the suitcase, $4 million in cash and bearer checks. Sarah looked at the money. "Are we quitting?" asked Arthur, shaking from adrenaline and lack of alcohol. Sarah lit a cigarette. She looked at the lights of the strip. She saw the Venetian Hotel glowing in the distance. The Venetian was bigger, richer, and more arrogant. "No," Sarah said. This was the warm-up. The Bellagio was easy. Now we're going for the Italians. Here we take a pause. Sarah Jenkins just won $4 million using a drunk as a puppet and a napkin as a remote control. But the Bellagio is just the beginning. Casinos talk to each other. Now they know there's a dangerous whale on the loose. To get into the Venetian and the win, Sarah won't be able to use the same trick. She's going to need something much riskier. If you want to know how a waitress managed to fool the most paranoid security in the world and multiply those 4 million by 6, subscribe right now, because in part 2, luck runs out and psychological warfare begins.
Hit the button because the Venetian is opening its doors. 2 months later. Money changes people, but Sarah kept going to work at the Bellagio every day. Why? Because she needed to remain invisible. If she quit her job, she would lose her access to information, and because she needed to hear the rumors. The rumor was this: the Venetian had just installed a new baccarat system, hybrid electronic tables, dealers brought in from the cow, and bets up to $250,000 per hand, and they were looking for players to inaugurate the room. Sarah knew Kenji was already burned. His face was in facial recognition databases under the tag Advantage Player. He couldn't go back in. Sarah needed a new face, and she needed a new strategy. Blackjack was out. Baccarat is a game of pure chance. There is no skill, unless you know the sequence of the cards. Casinos use automatic shuffling machines. They're supposed to be random, but Sarah, serving coffee to maintenance technicians at 6 a.m., heard something. Machine 4 at the Venetian jams if you use B-brand cards with the red border. They have a paper cutting flaw. Sometimes it doesn't shuffle the last 20 cards. The last 20 cards. If the machine doesn't shuffle a block of cards, that block repeats in the next game. It's what is called the phantom cut. If you know which cards came out at the end of the previous game, you know which cards will come out at the start of the next one. Sarah recruited her new actor. This time, it wasn't a drunk. It was Kenji, a young math student from MIT who worked as a valet at the Rio. Kenji had eidetic memory. He could remember a license plate by seeing it for a second. The plan was more complex. Kenji would enter as a wealthy tech heir from Tokyo. Kenji couldn't be at the Venetian working. She worked at the Bellagio. So Sarah did the unthinkable. She called in sick and entered the Venetian as a customer. She put on a blonde wig, sunglasses, and expensive clothes. She sat at a slot machine near the high-limit baccarat area.
Phase 1. Observation. Kenji sat at table 4, the defective table. He played smooth, losing a little, winning a little. His goal wasn't to win money yet. His goal was to memorize the last 20 cards of the shoe. When the dealer announced last hands, Kenji activated his brain. King, 7, 8, ace, jack. He memorized the sequence. The shuffling machine took the cards. It made its noise, shh, clack, shh. But Sarah, from her slot machine, saw the maintenance technician secretly tap the side of the machine. The machine had jammed for a microsecond. The flaw was real. The block of cards hadn't mixed. Phase 2, the attack. The new shoe came out. Kenji knew what was coming. He bet the allowed maximum, $150,000 on player. The dealer drew the cards. The sequence matched. Kenji won. Next hand, Kenji knew a tie was coming. He bet on tie, which pays 8-1. He put $50,000 on the tie. The tie came out. He won. $400,000 in a second. The Venetian isn't the Bellagio. The Venetian is aggressive. 3 security guys stood behind Kenji. "Sir, you are getting very lucky." Kenji, following Sarah's instructions, played dumb. "It's the feng shui," he said, smiling. "Today the dragons are with me." They kept playing. Every time the machine shuffled, Kenji memorized the end. If the flaw happened, and it happened 1 out of 3 times, Kenji destroyed the table. If the flaw didn't happen, Kenji played the minimum and lost to blend in. In 6 hours, Kenji had accumulated $8.5 million. The Venetian manager came down. They stopped the game. "Machine check," they ordered. They opened the shuffling machine. Sarah, from her slot machine, held her breath. If they found the mechanical flaw now, they would confiscate the money. The technician, the same one Sarah knew, looked at the machine. The technician knew the machine was bad, but he also knew that if he admitted to leaving a defective machine at the VIP table, he would be fired. So the technician looked at the manager and lied. "The machine is perfect, boss. It's random." The manager gritted his teeth. He couldn't prove anything. Kenji cashed out. They left separately. They met in a warehouse in the desert. $8.5 million, plus the 4 from the Bellagio, $12.5 million. Kenji wanted his cut and to flee. Sarah paid him $2 million and sent him to Japan. She stayed alone with $10 million. She could have retired. She could have disappeared.
But there was one left, the Wynn, the most luxurious casino. The owner, Steve Wynn, or his equivalent in this story, was famous for being the smartest man in the industry. Nobody fooled the Wynn. And Sarah wanted the final trophy. For the Wynn, Sarah didn't use card tricks. She didn't use discounts. She didn't use mechanical flaws. She used psychology. The Wynn had a secret program for super whales. They invited people who had credit lines of over $20 million. Sarah knew through her contacts that an Arab sheik was coming to town but had canceled at the last minute. Sarah hired Arthur again. Arthur, this is the performance of your life. You are going to be Prince Hakeem. They spent $500,000 setting the stage. They rented a fake entourage, rented Ferraris, forged bank transfers from Dubai. Arthur entered the Wynn like royalty. The Wynn gave him a private roulette table in his room. But here was Sarah's trick. She didn't want to win at roulette. She wanted to win on the exchange rate. Sarah had discovered an archaic clause in the Wynn's international credit contracts. If you deposited in euros and played, upon cashing out, the casino had the obligation to convert your chips back to the original currency at the fixed exchange rate of the time of deposit, to protect the player from fluctuation during their stay. But the currency market was volatile that week. Sarah knew, because she read financial news obsessively, that the European Central Bank was going to make a massive announcement on Wednesday that would devalue the euro. Arthur deposited 10 million euros, Sarah's accumulated money converted, on Monday. The exchange rate was $1.40 per euro. He received $14 million in chips. Arthur played for 2 days. His goal, not to lose. He played red and black at the same time. He lost a little due to the zero, the house edge, about $200,000. The casino was happy. The prince is playing, he's losing a bit, everything normal. Wednesday morning, the central bank announcement. The euro crashed. The exchange rate dropped to $1.20. If Arthur had kept his euros in the bank, he would have lost money. But Arthur had casino chips in dollars. Arthur called the manager. "I'm bored. I want to leave. Cash me out." Arthur handed over $13.8 million in chips, what he had left. And here came the masterstroke. Arthur said, "I want my dollars. I don't want euros back." The contract said the casino could return in the original currency, but Arthur, acting like a capricious sheik, demanded dollars. "If you give me weak euros, I will never return." The Wynn, terrified of losing a whale of this caliber for the future, agreed. They gave him $13.8 million. Sarah and Arthur left the hotel, went to the bank. With $13.8 million, they bought euros at the new cheap price of 1.20. They obtained 11.5 million euros.
They started with 10 million euros. They ended with 11.5 million euros. They won 1.5 million euros, almost $2 million, without really betting, just using the casino as a currency exchange with broken rules. But Sarah didn't stop there. They repeated the operation at Caesars and the MGM that same week, taking advantage of the volatility and the casino's slowness to update their exchange policies. In a week of financial frenzy, moving money back and forth like a legalized currency Ponzi scheme, Sarah turned her bankroll into $26 million. On Friday night, Sarah Jenkins went to work at the Bellagio. She wore her waitress uniform. She served drinks for 8 hours. She endured drunks touching her hand. She endured the boss yelling at her for being a minute late. At 4 a.m., her shift ended. She went to the manager's office. She left her tray on the table. She took off her name tag, Sarah. "What are you doing, Sarah?" asked the manager without looking up. "Going home?" Sarah smiled, a smile the manager had never seen on her. It wasn't the service smile. It was the smile of a predator that is eaten. "No, sir," said Sarah. "I'm going to buy the building across the street." Sarah walked out the doors of the Bellagio. Arthur was waiting for her in a red convertible. The sun was rising over the Nevada desert. Sarah let her hair down. She took off her comfortable waitress shoes and threw them in the trash can. No one ever knew that the woman serving the martinis was the owner of the city.
casinos changed their rebate rules. They changed their shuffling machines. They changed their currency policies. They looked for the culprits. They looked for Russian criminal gangs or Chinese hackers. They never suspected the waitress. Because remember rule number 1, no one looks the waitress in the eye. And you, the next time you order a drink at a casino, be kind, because that person serving you might be buying your life with the tip you just left them. If you like this story of how the invisible defeated the untouchable, hit like and subscribe. Next week, we will tell the story of the janitor who found a USB drive with the master keys to the slot machines, and what he did with it. See you in the next video.